Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of my favorite off-season episodes to do, and that is kind of getting into a nitty-gritty conversation regarding where this Notre Dame depth chart sits heading into fall camp, heading into 2025. Now, this is a football team that's one of the hottest programs that we see in the country. Like, there are a lot of well-respected national media analysts that are picking this team to go out and win a national championship in the 2025 year. I'll start with this. Look, rightfully so. Like, I'm putting together this depth chart. I'm looking at the boxes that I want to see checked for a national championship caliber team. Notre Dame has it going into 2025. That's a little bit of a difference than we've seen over the last 10 years with this Notre Dame program, where, it's always felt like Notre Dame's had very solid rosters, but you look at Notre Dame versus a team like Georgia or a team like Alabama over the last 10 years, probably wasn't quite national championship. I look at this team going into 2025. This team can win a national championship. And the other thing that really stood out to me as I'm putting together this post spring depth chart, no spring transfer portal window additions. In fact, I can't even recall over the last couple of weeks Notre Dame even trying to make a spring portal window addition. They didn't have any good football players leave their program outside of Steve Angeli, who wanted to go find a starting spot. That tells me a lot about where Marcus Freeman feels this roster's at. And we saw a lot of other really good football teams, Texas and Georgia get really aggressive in the spring portal window because they went through 15 spring practices and said, hey, we got some problems with our roster. Marcus Freeman went through 15 spring practices and said, we're ready to go going into 2025. I think that's notable. This is a team that has some legitimate high-end talent. I mean, some of the better players in the sport are on this roster, but at the same time does not have many holes. Like, we're going to work through this depth chart and say, hey, what's the position room that you don't feel good about going into 2025? When you have high-end talent and you don't have a lot of holes, like that to me is what you're looking for when you're talking national championship, as well as a quarterback, and we're going to get into it, that I'm excited for. Now, before we get into it, as always, the Notre Dame fans, number one, I always, especially for the Notre Dame fans that are watching a depth chart prediction episode in early May, like I know y'all follow this program damn closely. Would love to hear some changes you would make to the depth chart. Maybe if you want to call your shot in terms of players that are going to be breaking out going into 2025. I learn from you guys. It's a blast talking football with y'all in the comment section. Let it fly. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's start it off at the quarterback position. CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie. I think Marcus Freeman has a lot of confidence in both of these cats. Now, from what I have seen, more particularly what I saw in the spring game, I think CJ Carr is the guy. I think he gives Notre Dame the highest ceiling as an offense, especially when you start talking about, hey, what are the other aspects of this Notre Dame team we like a lot? I look at the wide receiver room and say, this is the best wide receiver room Notre Dame has had in a very long time. And you want a quarterback that has the arm talent to maximize the pass catching room. And I think CJ Carr is probably that guy. Now, to me, there's a difference between CJ Carr and some of the other quarterbacks that we've seen play for Notre Dame. And you go back to a guy like Sam Hartman, really highly regarded out of the transfer portal, but we kind of knew he wasn't an elevator of an offense. Like, I'm a Wake Forest alum, so I've watched a lot of Sam Hartman. I love Sam Hartman. We kind of knew he wasn't going to be a top 50 NFL draft pick. You look at Riley Leonard, there were a lot of things we liked about Riley Leonard, but he was a little bit limited in terms of what he could do pushing the ball down the field. CJ Carr has no limitations to him. This is a guy that can be a legitimate high-end NFL draft pick that has the arm talent to back it up. He checks a lot of boxes that you're looking for. For me, when I'm looking at Notre Dame, I'm saying, hey, what quarterback gives us the highest ceiling? What quarterback gives us the chance to win a national championship? To me, with the arm talent that CJ Carr has, I probably lean CJ Carr. And I know Kenny Minchie has been generating a lot of buzz, and look, rightfully so. At the beginning of spring, I actually predicted Kenny Minchie to win the battle. I wouldn't argue with Notre Dame fans who are Kenny Minchie fans. Running back room. One of, if not the best running back room in the country, headlined by one of the best players in all of college football, Jeremiah Love. I don't think I'm breaking any news here. He's probably the best player at this position going into 2025, playing behind an offensive line that should be one of the best units that we see in the country in 2025. I look at this offensive line and two things stand out. One, no transfer portal window additions. Uh, that's important in this day and age of college football where so many programs are trying to shuffle the deck year after year on the offensive line, bringing new faces, try to figure out the best five-man rotation. Notre Dame's just sitting here and saying, we got a ton of continuity. Like the guys that were playing for our offensive line in 2024, they're back in 2025. Now we're just trying to maximize what this starting five looks like. I look at Charles Jagasaw playing right guard. That seems to be the expectation, and say, this dude would be a high-end tackle. Like, what does that tell us about Emil Wagner, Anthony Knapp? That this is an offensive line that is talented. Like, it's filled with legitimate NFL dudes that is also deep as well. Like, I look at that two deep and say, I'd have a lot of confidence if you had to play the two deep on Saturdays. When you're deep and good on the offensive line, that's something that not a lot of programs have because it's really hard to hold on to your depth in this era of the transfer portal. Notre Dame has done that. Let's get to my hottest take that we have on this depth chart. That is the wide receiver room, and I'm sure Notre Dame fans are going to be letting it fly here. Jaden Greathouse moving from the slot to the boundary. I don't know if I love this, but I'm playing around with it, and I'll tell you why I'm playing around with it, because I look at, all right, who are the three best pass catchers in this room, at least in my opinion. It's Malachi Fields coming from Virginia. It's Jaden Greathouse, the way we saw this kid play in the back half of 2024, and it's Will Pauling coming from Wisconsin. Now, Will Pauling is a true slot wide receiver. Jaden Greathouse played a lot of snaps from the slot in 2024. If you want to try to get all three of these cats on the field at the same time, one of them is probably going to have to move to the boundary. I went with Jaden Greathouse. Now, I would understand if Marcus Freeman it would just be saying like, hey, Jaden Greathouse was emerging as one of the best pass catchers in the country towards the back half of the year, like what he did in the college football playoffs. We don't want to tinker with what was happening in the back half of 2024. I would understand leaving Jaden Greathouse in the slot, maybe get creative with Will Pauling, regardless of where these guys slot up. It's a couple of proven commodities, right? We know Malachi Fields can play. We know Will Pauling can play. We know Jaden Greathouse can play. Then you have guys like Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert. We know Jordan Faison can play. To me, it's by far the most talented wide receiver room we've seen Notre Dame have in a very long time. And I remember over the last couple of years, Notre Dame fans and I have gone back and forth because I've had, skepticism of the wide receiver room in years past. I don't have any I don't have any question marks about this unit in 2025. I think it's one of the better units that you see across the country. It's deep, it's talented. Going over to the defensive side of the football, it's again, you're just seeing a lot of boxes get checked. I think the question that I have, by the way, I thought Jared Dawson, the transfer from Louisville, played awesome in the spring game. And I think the biggest question we all might have about this Notre Dame defense is, hey, we replaced some dudes in the middle of this defensive line. Are we going to be good enough at that position? Thought Jared Dawson made a very good argument that we're going to be just fine in the middle of that defensive line. The question that I'm looking for is, who are going to be the game wreckers? Like, who are going to be some of the best pass rushers in the country on this Notre Dame defensive line? Because you got a lot of potential names. Now, you got some guys coming off of injury. I'll say this, Jordan B., before he got hurt in 2024, was dominant. And so he's certainly a name to monitor, as well as Bubakar. I look at Bryce Young going into year two. Like, we saw Bryce Young, and I think it just starts with God don't make many Bryce Youngs, like the twitch that he has, the length that he has. He's got all the tools to be an elite pass rusher at the collegiate ranks. And you saw the light bulb flicker. If it didn't fully turn on last year, but it certainly was flickering. Does it turn on in 2025? That's one of those positions where you look at the past national championship teams, Michigan in 2023, Ohio State in 2024, Georgia in 2021 and 2022. all of those teams, they won national championships in different ways. They had elite defensive fronts. They had elite defensive fronts and they had deep defensive fronts. I think Notre Dame has a very good chance to have that kind of defensive line going into 2025. And you look at the linebacker room. This is a juiced up linebacker room that's got some real difference makers and some real athleticism. Bowen, we kind of know. Kingston Viliamu going into year two. I think there's a chance he's like one of the best linebackers in the country going into year two. And then Jalen Sneed really turned it on last year after kind of a slow start to his career at Notre Dame. And then Madden coming in as a true freshman who very similar to a guy like Kingston coming over from the state of California, probably going to be in the two deep. You got what I think can be a really good defensive line with some really active off ball linebackers. It's a really, really good combination, especially with Marcus Freeman dialing it up on the defensive side of the football. Going back to the secondary, like on paper, you lose Benjamin Morrison, you lose Xavier Watts. What's this secondary going to look like? You start getting into this secondary and say, it should be pretty damn good in 2025 as well. The development of this unit for Notre Dame has been elite. To me, it starts with a guy like Leonard Moore. He had 56 targets faced last year, gave up 26 catches and only one penalty. He's one of the most battle-tested cornerbacks that we saw and came up time and time again. Christian Gray, really good football player too. Like you have two boundary cornerbacks that you trust playing on islands, which allows you to be so creative on defense. When you don't have to hide your cornerbacks, when you can trust them to do what they need to do on the boundary, we can start dialing it up with our safeties and backers. I think another sneaky name to watch, Devonta Smith coming from Alabama, really good nickel cornerback, and then Jalen Stroman coming from Virginia Tech. That was another very quality addition. What we've seen from Notre Dame in the portal is we're not going to go get guys just to get guys. We're going to get guys that we really like, that we think can help our team immediately. I think Devontae Smith and Jalen Stroman are those kind of guys for Notre Dame. Wrapping up this episode in terms of what this team looks like going into 2025, and you look at the criteria we want to see from national championship caliber teams, you could argue Notre Dame's checking almost every single box you're looking for. Like, I think they'll have an elite front seven. I think they have a difference maker at quarterback. They're going to have a very good run game. And I think they have the difference makers on the outside. Like when you check those kind of boxes and you're a deep team, which is really important. Just ask Notre Dame last year. Like if you want to go compete for national championship, you got to be deep because chances are you're going to have some injuries along the way. You can't have significant drop off with those injuries. Notre Dame really didn't have that drop off last year. It's another deep football team going into 2025. I think that speaks to probably, the Marcus Freeman culture where it's like, hey, some of these guys aren't slotted to start, probably would start on a lot of other Power 4 programs across the country, but they decide to stay at Notre Dame. That's not happening at a lot of other programs. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Fire me up for this football team. On paper, we're just talking on paper right now. It's really, really good. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.